flag followed by a moment of silence. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Check your mic there, Kenny.
Sorry. Item 301, election of a temporary president. Do I have any nominations for the temporary president?
I nominate Carl McKee.
Second.
Nominated Carl McKee by Mrs. Gogler, second by, Mr. Haydock. Do I have any other nominations?
Motion to close nominations.
Thank you, Mr. Norcross. Do I have a second to close?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Norcross, second by Dr. Diller. We'll do a roll call vote. Oh, first of all, Mr. McKee, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We'll do a roll call vote. Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Skogler?
Yes.
Ms. Gauss?
Yes.
Ms. Harbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Haydock?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr.
I should
Norcross?
abstain.
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0. Mr. McKee, I will pass you the gavel.
Okay. Okay, now we're going to have, whoa.
Don't get carried away.
We're going to open the nominations for president of the board. Do we have any nominations, please?
I nominate Ed Norcross.
Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations for the president of the board? If not, then I need a motion to close the nominations.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved in second to close the nominations. So we'll have a vote on the chairman or the president of the board.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Ms. Gauss?
Yes.
Ms. Harbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Haydock?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Pass the gavel back.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, fellow board members. I'm going to interject one quick item here before we go to 303, circle back to 1.01. The board did meet in executive session prior to the meeting tonight to discuss real estate. So back to 3.03, a motion and second for nomination of vice president, please.
I motion to nominate Mrs. Gogler for vice president.
Motion by Mrs. Harbaugh, second by Mrs. Gauss. Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, a motion to close nominations, please.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McKee, second by Mr. Raber. Okay. All those in favor signify by, or do you need to roll call? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Ms. Gauss?
Yes.
Ms. Harbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Haydock?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Raber?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
Yes.
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay. Item 3.04, more of an information item than anything. The distribution of the board membership list. If you see anything that is incorrect on there, please let Tammy know and we will get that corrected quickly, for everyone's sake. All right, very good. Another note here that I'll throw in tonight is, and it's for this reorg also right now. If you didn't know it, you will now, that tonight is the start of the videotaping of board members during discussion. So now everyone knows it. Okay, item 4.01, election of board members to the Joint Operating Committee of the Franklin Learning Center. We need 4 members, each for a 1-year term. And our 4 right now are, who's on that now? Mike, you're on Franklin Learning Center?
Yes.
Stephanie Gales.
Mike, Stephanie, Lance, and who's our 4th now?
Sherry.
Sherry, okay. Need a motion and a second
So move.
to
What,
To approve that list.
approve the same list?
Yeah.
Okay. Motion by Mr. McKee,
Second.
second by Mr. Walker. Any other elections? We need a motion to close that one also?
yeah, I'm sorry, can we repeat the 4? I have,
The 4 are Mr. Hayduck,
Giles, Diller, and
Walker,
Dr. Diller, Mr. Walker, and Mrs. Gauss.
yes. And it was McKee and Rayber for the
And
motion?
Walker, McKee and
Walker.
Walker.
Thank you.
I'll get a little quicker.
And do we need to close
Yes.
these also? So we also need a motion and second to close the election of the 4 aforementioned members.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Gogler, second by Mr. Raber.
Okay.
Mrs. Stauffer, roll call, please.
Ms. Harbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Haydutt?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Rayber?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
yes,
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
And Ms. Gauss?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, item 4.
I can look.
Hey, for you 4 members, can you ask why there's 4 alternates? I've never seen that before on any agenda. Usually there's 1 or 2 alternates, not 4. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's part of the bylaws or what, but it seems very excessive.
That's the way we've always done it.
Has there always been 4?
I move we change it.
Because the meetings are usually in conflict with career tech meetings. So, you know, those alternate, if you have 4 now as an elected member and you have 3 on career tech, there's really only 2.
Well, can you just say you approve
2
the
more
list as it
available
stands?
alternates.
'Cause,
I kind of think all of you were alternates at one point, if I remember.
That was my understanding.
Ms. Gogler is an alternate. Ms. Harbaugh is an alternate. Mr. McKee is an alternate, and Mr. Rayber is an alternate. And you're correct, Mr. Norcross, you were not listed.
very good.
Seniority has its privileges. All right, do we have a motion for, do we want 4? It's probably easier to keep it the way it is. Do we have a motion for 4
Just
alternates
ask
for
them
a
when you
1-year
go to the
term?
meeting.
So move.
What? I missed that. I'm sorry.
Doing the motion for the alternate. She
Doing the
moved.
motion for
I'll
the same
second.
4 alternates.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mrs. Gogler, second by Mrs. Harbaugh. Any other, if not, a motion to close the elections.
I move to close the elections.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McKee, second by Mrs. Gauss. Okay, roll call, Mrs. Stauffer.
Mr. Haydutt?
Yes.
Mr. McKee?
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Rayber?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Diller?
yes,
Ms. Gogler?
Yes.
Ms. Gauss?
Yes.
And Ms. Harbaugh.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay. Item 5.01, elect one member for 3-year term. Whose term is up?
Carl's.
Carl's is up, okay.
I move to appoint Carl back.
I'll second.
Motion by Mrs. Gogler, second by Mrs. Harbaugh. Mr. McKee, do you accept?
Yes.
Okay. Any other elections? Motion to close elections, please.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Walker and second by
Oh, sorry, I'll second. Sorry, Lance, I didn't know you were looking for a
Leave me
second.
hanging.
Mrs. Harbaugh. Ms. Harbaugh. All right. Mrs. Stauffer, roll call, please.
Mr. McKee,
Yes.
Mr. Norcross,
Yes.
Mr. Raber,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Dr. Diller,
Yes.
Ms. Gogler,
Yes.
Ms. Gauss,
Yes.
Ms. Harbaugh,
Yes.
Mr. Hayduck.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, we're getting closer, gang. Appoint members to Franklin County Area Tax Board and Franklin County Tax Collection Committee.
This one will help you out. We want Tammy Stauffer and Danette Knoll to be our representatives that do not have to be board members, unless board members have a dire desire to serve on those two organizations. Correct, Tammy?
Correct.
So we have to do these individually, though, still?
You could do one vote if you'd like.
We can combine them?
Because
Okay,
you're not electing, you're just appointing.
right. Looking for a motion for combining 6.01 and 6.02 to appoint Mrs. Stauffer as a representative to the tax board and Mrs. Knoll as the alternate to the tax board. Motion and second, please.
So move.
Second.
Okay. That was in unison.
We need rock, paper, scissors.
Give someone else.
Motion by Mr. Walker, second by Mr. Raber. You're very popular, Tammy. Had to drag a motion out of them before.
I know, I
Jump into the
know.
front of the
That's
line now.
awesome. Okay, Mr. Norcross,
Yes.
Mr. Raber,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Dr. Diller,
Yes.
Ms. Gogler,
Yes.
Ms. Gauss,
Yes.
Ms. Harbaugh,
Yes.
Mr. Hayduck,
Yes.
and Mr. McKee.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay. 7.01 LIU board seat. Currently, that's Mrs. Harbaugh, right? Okay.
Yes, that is me.
Do we have a motion and second to select a nominee for LIU board?
So move to keep Mrs. Harbaugh as the LIU board seat.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McGee, second by Mr. Hayduck. Any other nominations? If not, motion to close nominations, please.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Gauss, second by Mrs. Gogler. Roll call, Mrs. Stauffer, please.
Mr. Raber,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Dr. Diller,
Yes.
Ms. Gogler,
Yes.
Ms. Gauss,
Yes.
Ms. Harbaugh,
Yes.
Mr. Hayduck,
Yes.
Mr. McKee,
Yes.
and Mr. Norcross.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay. And item 8.01, again, for information, and it's included on the board for the audience. And everyone, the advertised meeting dates for the coming year. We need a motion and second to approve the meeting dates, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Harbaugh, second by Mrs. Gogler. Questions, discussions, comments? I'll save mine for the president's report. Okay. Do we do roll call in this? Okay. Roll call, Mrs. Stauffer, please.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Dr. Diller,
Yes.
Ms. Gogler,
Yes.
Ms. Gauss,
Yes.
Ms. Harbaugh,
Yes.
Mr. Hayduck,
Yes.
Mr. McKee,
Yes.
Mr. Norcross?
Yes.
Mr. Rayber?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
And with that, our reorganization meeting is closed. But we are not done, ladies and gentlemen, for the evening. That's just part one. So go ahead and call our regular meeting, committee of the whole meeting to order. We've done our pledge and our moment of silence, so we will go right into the agenda. I did mention earlier the executive session that board met prior to this meeting to discuss real estate matters. So with that, item 3.01, Mr. Bigger.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Norcross. Thanks, everybody, for reorganizing and doing that pretty efficiently. Appreciate everybody staying and participating in all their seats and locations, so thank you for that. I know it's a lot of time away from home, so I always appreciate people's participation. I hope everyone enjoyed their Thanksgiving holiday. As someone pointed out, there's only 13 days till the next one. And that was a student, not an adult, by the way. So they're counting the days, the Christmas holiday. Just a couple informational items. We do have an additional public forum Q&A at the Rec Center this Thursday at 6 o'clock, December 6th. So we hope people come participate on our continued communication around the changes in the Chambersburg School District, around schools of distinction, and our facility improvements. There will be a final public forum scheduled here December 9th. Will be our last and final public forum, and we will also release a final survey to go out tomorrow, just as a quick check-in. It's 4 or 5 questions to see about the number of people who have listened to and/or participated in a forum, or at least watched the forum and looked at the Q&A. So it's more of a gauge of how many people have listened, have paid attention, and getting some of their thoughts and feedback. I do want to thank Kurt Widman and Mark Long for taking teams of people to visit schools and continuing to benchmark our practices. That's been a standard practice for us in areas we're looking to improve. We go visit a school or go to a session together and study the topic, whether it's the change in hours and days on the school calendar or improving reading by 3rd grade. We continue to go look for best practices outside Chambersburg at times, and that's always a good practice. Informational item, the downtown CEC Engagement Center, scheduled to be open December 16th. I'm looking soft opening, so we hope to get it practiced and up and running, and then a hard opening at the new year. Yeah. So we'll get you down there to check out the site to see what it looks like in the weeks and days to come. And then the last component, I think, Mr. Norcross, at the last meeting, you talked about an investment. And in the forums, we talk about schools of distinction by 2030. So this investment is really, our goal is to have as many schools of distinction as possible by the year 2030. And we're working forward for that time frame, whether it's a facility, an educational program, a performance in reading by 3rd grade, and improvements. It doesn't matter for us. We want that distinction. So that's our investment. And so using those words, schools of distinction by 2030, that's our investment. Thank you, and that's the end of my report.
And so that is the name of our
Schools of
project.
Distinction. Yep, it is.
Schools of Distinction.
Yep, by 2030.
By 2030.
Yep.
I like it. I'm gonna cross that off my list. That was one of my notes here.
Yeah.
There's only 2 left.
All right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bigger. And first, I'd like to just thank fellow board members. I appreciate your support in allowing me to serve as your board president again this year. I shared a couple of you a month ago at our November Committee of the Whole meeting when we really took the deep dive into the Schools of Distinction by 2030 project. And it just charged me up to, I guess the best way I could say it. I thought it was a great presentation by our outside consultants. It was a great presentation by our internal team. And then the discussion was very appropriate, very well mannerly and everything. And it was just very exciting to be able to start the Schools of Distinction 2030 project off so well like you all did a month ago. And I look forward to just continuing that. Couple small items, little Ed Norcross personal things for the year. And one of them was going to be how we're going to brand this investment. And Mr. Bigger, as usual, is 1 step ahead of me, 2 or 3 steps ahead, so that one's done. Another one, both of these I've mentioned in the past. I thought I'd take a couple minutes right now this evening. Last year, we made some great strides in our staffing. I think one area that I'd really like to focus on this year is our special education staffing. I think for a couple reasons. One, it is a pretty good line on the budget. It's a line that we don't transfer as much into, I don't think, as we used to, but we still transfer a lot into it. And you want to talk about an investment. Dr. Diller has coached me up on this over the past couple of years. I think there's a lot of investment we can do to help mitigate and try to get a better control of those exponential costs that we've seen. As long as I've been on the board, I think every year we have transferred for special education. So that's one of my goals I'd like to see us all work towards. And the other one goes to the Schools of Distinction by 2030 project, and that's the resolution that we bring forward, the resolution of how we want to, if we want to, and then how we want to change the current resolution for the +1 or +X in coming years, now that we are really on the cusp of starting to get into this aggressive borrowing. And the aggressive borrowing, as for those of you who didn't see or hear or haven't heard, we're talking $170 million in borrowing over the next 7 to 8 years, probably 7 years, 6 to 7 years probably. That's a lot. That's probably over a 10%. If you look at just current mills rate, that's a 10% just to cover that debt service, probably on your mills. So it's a big project. And I think that resolution, we started 3 years ago, but we didn't have the momentum and the project in front of us like we do now, and I think it just needs cleaned up a little bit, if you so wish. So they're my 3 of my quick personal ones, and just as a general one, I just urge the board that we continue to, we approved the board meetings. I thank Mr. Bigger for bringing forth this process that we've used where we do the committee of the whole, the first meeting of the month. Great opportunity to discuss, really vet things out. And then at the second meeting, we vote. We're also allowed to discuss again. But in my, now going into my 12th year of board service, we don't seem to be having the same discussion at 2-3 weeks in a row. We discuss it once, next meeting we vote on it, and then we move on because we all know we have a lot to cover. So just appreciate that process, and for board members as we go through it, I think it helps the meetings, it helps the audience, it helps the public, that we try to stay with the flow of the agenda. I make my share of mistakes every now and then, and I skip forward a line or two. And that just confuses people, and I apologize. But as board members, if you see an item coming up, just be patient. We're going to get to it on the agenda at one point or another. So that concludes my remarks. Presentations, 4.01. Proposed preliminary budget for 25-26, Mrs. Stauffer.
Good evening. I think that's on. This evening, we're going to talk about the proposed preliminary budget for 2025. Again, our purpose is staying the same as it was last year, and that's to create a sustainable and stable education program. This evening, we're going to talk a little bit about preparing the forecast, what our projected revenue and expenditures are, what our projected surplus or deficit is, and what the next steps will be. In preparing the forecast, Danette Knowlton and I in my office, we do our expenditure assumptions, we look at the revenue assumptions, we project what we think is going to be the surplus or the deficit, and define what we need to do as we move throughout the budget cycle. In looking at revenue in the proposed preliminary budget, the expenditures, we're looking at about a 5.88% increase in the salary and benefits line. This is primarily due to contracted salary increases and also some additional positions that I believe are on tonight or tomorrow or next meeting to be approved by the board. And these are the positions that Mr. Widman had presented at the last meeting. We're also anticipating a 10% healthcare increase in our premiums for about 1.9, almost $2 million. We are going to see a slight rate increase in PSERS going into the 25-26 school year, very slight, from 33.9 to 34.72, but that's going to be about an additional $1.5 million expense for the district. The salary and benefits do have the proposed positions pending approval by the board, and you see those listed there, and I think you're probably fairly familiar with those. We did, to Mr. Nordercross's point, we included the capital reserve resolution at 1%, and we upped that to $3.5 million to get a reoccurring additional line of debt service into the budget so that as we move forward with the schools of distinction, we're starting to build that additional debt service as a reoccurring line item. We also have some increases due to inflation or the cost of doing business. We're anticipating our liability insurance going up by 10% or $55,000. We have some small capital need projects. Even though we're going to do a very big, large project, we still have some small things. So we added $150,000 into the buildings and grounds budget. Transportation contracts, we're estimating, are going up around $413,000. Moving on to the revenue assumption, this proposed preliminary budget is estimated to increase the real estate tax rate by 2%. That will net us around $3.2 million of additional revenue. We're assuming that the assessment base is going to grow at around 1%. It'll take it up to about $787 million. We assumed a 98% collection rate. That'll take the mills to 135.1429. The value of a mill at that rate is a little over $900,000, and the value of the collected mill will be about $882,000. Do want to point out that even without a tax rate increase, just due to the growth of the assessment base, we will generate $1.1 million of additional real estate revenue tax. So a few other things that we did with the local, as Danette and I always look at the history, we try to project what we think is going to happen. So we made some adjustments. I'm not going to go through all of those. Probably the most important thing is line 6, which is our earned income tax. It's a big line on the local. We're keeping that flat at the existing 24-25. All indications are that we're going to probably be very close with that number this year, and the economy is still doing very well with low unemployment rates, so we think that's a reasonable expectation for 26-25. Looking at the state sources, really what I'm going to point out here is that we kept the basic state subsidies at the level that we received in 24-25. So it does include the 8.2 of additional revenue that we generated this year from the state. That's in line items, the basic ed subsidy, the special education subsidy, and also the Ready to Learn block grant, which is where the bulk of the money came in. We will see increased revenue from the state for our PSERS reimbursement. This is purely due to the fact that our PSERS expenditure is going to be more, but that'll be about $970,000, and then an increase in the reimbursement for Social Security of $151,000. Federal sources, not a whole lot of positive to report on this slide. All the ESSERS money is gone. Basically, that ended in September of 2024. We have seen some decreases in Title I and Title II, so we've adjusted for that. Probably the biggest line item is Title IV, which we have the Bipartisan Safety Community Act. I have a hard time saying that, which we did receive that grant, so we increased our budget by about $1.8 million. All of these federal expenditures have offset, all the federal revenue has offset expenditures on the expenditure budget. So at 2%, we're looking at our revenues coming in around $201 million. That's good news. And the other better news is our expenditures are around $201 million as well. We do have a slight offset of a deficit of about $453,000. Been saying million too much. That would be not a slight offset. That would be a huge offset. Really feel that we'll close the gap on that as we continue to work through this budget process in the spring. To note on there, we did include the interfund transfers that were approved, I believe, in October, and we are anticipating some additional interfund transfers to healthcare, the cap reserve, and the debt service fund of about $5 million. So at the end of the 25-26 school year, we would be looking at an assigned fund balance of just a little over $22 million. That's about 11% of our expenditures, and that's pretty healthy for where we need to be right now. I'm pretty comfortable with that assigned fund balance. So this is just a chart to show you, again, our adjusted Act 1 index is 5.3%. That's the max that we can go to without applying for exceptions, which we won't qualify for. So you'd have to go to a referendum vote. This just shows you the additional real estate taxes that we can generate at each level of the tax increase. So we did 0 to 5.3, and you can see that ranges from 1.1 million to a little over 6.5 million. The next slide then just shows you where we are with our expenditures and where you can see what the either the deficit or the surplus would be with each of those tax increase levels. I'm kind of going through this fast, but you guys have seen this stuff before, so. But if you have any questions, I'll take them at the end. So in looking at our revenue, again, we're a little over $200 million going into 25-26. The revenues, of course, the majority of the sources come from the local, about 61%, about 34% from the state, 3% from the federal. It's like woohoo. And then 2% other is just our budgetary reserve that sits on both sides of our budget. Looking at some comparison, if you want to look at the 23-24 school year, really the takeaway from this, and it's very hard to see, is that the federal bar from 23-24 shrunk. And again, that's just due to the ESSER's funding being removed from our budget. But other than that, the sources and how they're distributed are pretty fairly equal in terms of percentages. They don't vary much from year to year. Looking at the expenditures, if we want to look at it in terms of the objects, as you know, we account for our funds by major object and major function. The takeaway from this slide is about 85% of all of our budget is wrapped up in people who are providing services to our students. So 64% is salary and benefits. And then when you look at the purchased services, that's where all of our contracted services are. So contracted bus drivers, contracted PCAs, just anybody that's working with our kids that we are paying through a contract. So. And again, this is just a comparison from 23-24 to our current budget until the proposed budget. And again, if you look at those bars, they're fairly equally distributed year after year. They don't change a whole lot in terms of the percentages. Expenditures by function, the takeaway from this, we have 62% of our expenditures going towards direct instruction. So it's anything that we charge to the 1,000 categories, so regular ed, special ed, alternative ed, vocational education. The support services, where you see there, it's about 27%. A lot of that, again, is supplemental services for our students, so counseling, psychology, nurses, social work. You have transportation in there. We also have technology, and then the administration. So the majority of that, you can look at that and see that is going directly to support the students of the district. Just a review, again, year-by-year comparison, and again, these are going to look very similar. There might be a little bit of adjustment with the dark gray bars because of the supplemental, or excuse me, the ESSER's money that was going towards facilities back in 23-24. So the next steps. For December 10th, we would be presenting to the board an opt-out resolution. Those of you who have been on the board will remember this. It's something we do in December that basically says the board is opting out of applying for exceptions. We're going to stay within the index, meaning that we feel we can or balance a budget at no more than what the Act 1 adjusted index is, which is 5.3%. You would also be voting to approve the proposed preliminary budget. And then Danette and I will kind of work down through stuff until we get to May. May 1st is a good date for us. That's when we get the state's notification of the taxpayer relief, as well as from the county. We'll get the files of all the properties that qualify for that. We would look at bringing a proposed final budget forward in May, and then adopt the final budget in June. And that's it, quick and easy. Any questions?
Questions, board members? I'm gonna add one, slide 5, go back to slide 5 real quick, please. The interest slide, the interest number, I think it was line 4.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Scott's doing it. I'm trying to
Aye.
click and he's doing it.
I love that number.
Yeah.
And I love that slide. I was kind of surprised, as we heard last month, you know, interest rates are coming down, which is a good thing when we're gonna get ready to start borrowing 170 million.
Yeah.
But our interest income is still gonna go up?
Yeah, we're going to be over budget again this year, and the rates are coming down, but they're not dropping dramatically. Like
So
we
the
look at,
balance is higher.
yeah,
That's
and
what
and
I'm
we've been moving money more over to Pliget. Danette's done a wonderful job at doing cash flow management, so we're getting it over there sooner. So we feel that that's a realistic number
I'm
at this
sold.
point.
You sold me.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other?
Any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Stout.
You're very welcome.
Alignment of high school schedules. You want to introduce them?
Yeah. So we were supposed to present earlier in November. We had to bump the presentation a little bit. We were getting out of whack with some of our presentations, but I'm very happy to have Dr. Long, Mr. Stenger, and Mr. Ocker here to present the alignment of schedules. There are a lot of moving parts to what can happen after the alignment of schedules. So please hear the presentation all the way through and then ask questions at the end. This is connected to the schools of distinction, and it's more than just Cassius. It's Cassius, CMS, and Franklin County Career Tech, somewhat all combined.
Thank you, Mr. Bigger and board members. Hopefully everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday and we're excited to come back to school. For starters, like Mr. Bigger said, our goal tonight is to share with you our plans for alignment of schedules throughout the high schools. So when we started talking about the situation, you always look at what's the pros, what's the cons. And instead, we're going to focus on what are the opportunities or challenges. So for starters, opportunities would be program improvement, be less start and stops. For instance, right now at the high school, we're running 47-minute periods. So what that would mean is now we could actually extend that and like hands-on learning involving like welding and art type classes. They would be longer duration, so you wouldn't have as many starts and stops. We would be able to afford more credit recovery. Students who maybe struggle in a semester, they could actually retake the course again the following semester. So it would be fresh still in their mind that they could improve upon. There'd be fewer transitions. Fewer transitions meaning we'd only now have maybe 4 transitions throughout the day rather than the 7 or 8 that we have. So you'd have fewer students in the hallways. Opportunity for early graduation. Currently we run a 7-period day. And of course, moving to a block, that would afford us really 8 classes throughout the year. If you do the math, 8 times 4 versus 7 times 4, students get more credits in 4 years, so you'd have opportunities for earlier graduation. There'd be flexible movement between the schools. Currently CMS, Caches, FCCTC, as well as CVA, our online school. We would be incorporating a grade 9 academy, which would provide us the opportunity to assist students coming in through their transition to the high school. And if you look at any of the research, it shows students who successfully complete grade 9 tend to graduate. Students who do not, they struggle and may not graduate on time. We'd also have more time. An opportunity would be to work with our ESL and special education by providing additional periods throughout the day because of the block type situation and alignment of our schedules. Now, as we also talked about the challenges, there are challenges that we need to face and think about. One would be, again, instruction, and that's providing our staff the opportunity to be prepared to teach instead of a 47-minute period a day, a 90-minute period at a time. We have this year taken this entire year to high school to prepare our staff. We brought in the IU to support our staff, and so that way they know how to develop lesson planning and so forth for instruction. Another challenge, of course, is career partners. Changes in time and semester. Sometimes our partners out there are used to what we're currently doing, so we'd have to deal with those challenges and help them get back on board with us. You know, we have a lot of great partners. And then, of course, lastly is continued professional development. Just getting in that routine, and then also we'd be getting new staff throughout each school year, so you have to keep them up on what it looks like to teach in that type of a class period, 90 minutes. So that would be opportunities and some challenges.
All right. So at CMS, we've been on the block schedule for 10 or 12 years. So I'm just here to kind of reiterate what Brad said and give you some highlights of what we've learned running this schedule. As Brad was saying, we have higher graduation rates, and a lot of that looks like if a student is failing a class early on, they have a chance to retake it second semester. Whereas you have the four-quarter class, you get kids that are, at the end of the year, they don't know whether they're going to pass it or not, and then it's too late. And then it's up to credit recovery, which some kids don't do during the summer. With our career tech, our dual enrollment, our co-op, and our school to work, it becomes flexible, individualized scheduling. So we're able to be really creative how we get kids out in the workforce and over to career tech. Of course, career tech runs on the block schedule, so we have to, but it's been very, very good for us. And balanced load of academics. So when I talk to the teachers and the students, they love the fact that they can concentrate on 3 core classes in a semester and not 6. So they can put all their effort into that. So that's a positive. All right. So as we talk about best practices, which is hands-on learning, it's a lot easier to do hands-on learning for activities in a 90-minute class than it is for a 45. If you're talking about setup, getting deep into the subject, so you're really talking about quality over quantity. When we're talking about, K to 3, our goal is to have every kid reading by K to 3, and then when you get past that, we want to get into some more of that in-depth writing. There's more time to give feedback on detailed writing. We can take the writing deeper and stronger, and that teacher's allows for that teacher to spend more one-on-one time with that student to really critique their writing. Student-teacher relationships are better, and you can look at this either way. Student has a teacher they don't like, they only have them for half a year, right? Teachers don't get burned out on the same kids all year. They get to know more kids throughout the school year, so it's better for culture, really is. Our students are going to college. The average college is an hour and a half class. It creates stamina and endurance for these kids. They understand what it's like to be in class for an hour and a half. They learn how to manage their time and to stay focused for an hour and a half. There's more support in the classroom. It's easier to manage staff, especially for our special ed students, to get more help in there, okay? And then if you're gonna do project-based learning, takes a lot of time, and the block really creates time for the teachers to set up and the kids to really, really dive deep, whether it's a science lab, okay, or like we're doing now, creating rockets and stuff like that. In 45 minutes, you feel rushed, and you don't go deep into the subject, where in that 90 minutes you can. So again, just, that's our experience. It's been a positive one for CMS, okay? Thank you.
You're going to hear an awful lot of the same things in my research statements, and I promise you I did not give the research to these 2 guys to talk about prior to. But the research articles that I used are at the bottom of the screen. A survey of high school block scheduling versus traditional, and then 2 leading authorities describe what results when high school students use alternative schedules. I can tell you that there are many schedules in high schools, from teaming to AB to block to traditional, and traditional breaks it down to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 periods a day. So looking at the research, and the reason why I'm doing the research is I believe a couple board members wanted this brought out earlier in the year. So one major item, if you look at the list, one major item that many researchers state is that the schedule success is based on a few things. One is leadership of the building, training provided to staff, climate and culture within the building, and engagement of the students. You need items in order for any schedule to be successful. But what happens is that a schedule within what we're trying to do in the district is that you have to look now, and they've already talked about this, if a student has 7 periods a day, they can have 7 classes a day or 6 classes. But if you have 9 periods a day, at one time, correct, we were at 9 periods a day at the high school. Students could take 8 or 9 classes. I don't even see how that's possible That's too many classes running together. But if you're on a block, you're running 3 to 5 classes a semester. That's very doable. So what that creates is less stress on the teacher and the student by being able to focus on 3 to 5 classes instead of the multiple classes. One thing that this does then, by using the block, it does decrease the discipline 30 to 50%. Suspensions decline, the number of office referrals decline, teacher and student attendance improves, and the number of class tardies improve. And they focus on the reduction of passing times, number one, and the engagement in classrooms to keep the kids in those classrooms instead of skipping classes. And then that relates to the climate of the school improving. Many researchers state that the climate of the school is better since free time is less, learning time is increased, and the relationships among teachers and students increase as well. Being in a classroom together and doing different projects, different techniques within the English classes and things really allow teachers and students to have that relationship that they need. And then it proposes a deeper learning due to the longer class periods as well. Graduation rates, Sean already said that his graduation rates have increased, and many schools have increased the graduation rate due to block scheduling, due to the ability to take the class again during the schedule itself. This is a minor item, but it was very important to some of the researchers and some of the opinions of teachers that the electives build one another. I'm going to use Spanish. You have Spanish 1, Spanish 2, and you can do Spanish 1 and Spanish 2 in 1 year. So there's no summer break between 1, there's no summer break between 2, 3, and 4. You can finish a language with 4 courses in 2 years. And I know that I had a young lady out there earlier on, I think it was 2014, that she did German and Spanish in her 4 years of school because that's the way she lined up her schedule. And then performance, the block also is assisting in performance as well. Let me change this. So this relates to our 2030 School of Distinction plan that we've spoken about already at the beginning of the meeting. And this is opportunities within our alignment of schedules. So I have the 4 areas that our schools right now at the secondary, Cassius CMS, CVA, which is our virtual academy, and then the Career Center. With this, we want to expand options in programming for career and college readiness. But, you know, back in 2012, we prepared options. And I don't know if many people were in this room in 2012, but it's only 12 years ago. It seems like 25 years ago. But we did options, and we really presented options for the Career Center, for CMS, for an online program, and also Cassius, and what we were going to do in each one of them to prepare the kids and for their selection as well. But at that time, they were looking at a 9th grade academy. What we would like to do in the Schools of Distinction would be to create a 9th grade academy at Cassius in order to prepare the students to be better outfitted for their high school career. An idea is that if we have the 9th grade academy at Cassius, we have all the 9th graders attend Cassius, so every one of them receives the same information and the same ideas about high school and about how they can overcome things as they go through 10th through 12th grade then. If we did this, this would allow CMS to have 130 open spots for 10th through 12th graders then. Then they could focus more on career-based items there. Another opportunity would be, if we went to alignment of the schedules, would be to take courses between the buildings. I know the gentlemen behind me are talking about students and trying to get them the right courses that they need to make sure that they're ready to go on to college or the workforce. So they are trying to do that now, but it's tricky with the alignment of the schedule. Sean has already said about the Career Center is a semester about. I think they're one of 2 schools within the state that are on a semester about. And I actually love that with the Career Center because it gives the kids an opportunity to really dig deep. And likewise, it digs with the block schedule that's required to go along with the the Career Center. We're able to dig deep in that area as well as academics. So with that, we could alignment of schedules with a block for the Career Center. Students would have the ability to choose which high school they go to. Or we could say, okay, well, if we do something different, they could go to CMS or they could go to Cassius. Right now, they go to CMS. So I'm going to repeat some things that I presented before and Mr. Biggers presented, that we have 300 to 500 students each year that do not receive the option that they really want based on other things that are out of their control. So there's not enough seats in these places. If we were to do something like CMS 2.0, then we can actually give them a little bit more leeway to do that. If we were to have 750 to 1,000 seats in CMS 2.0, the disparity that we have of those 300 to 500 students, along with the Career Center giving us more seats in newer programs, we could eliminate that disparity completely. And that would be our goal. That would be what we would want to see for students, because then we would be able to give them a choice that they need. So just to review some things about CMS 2.0, it was like the Ignite school in Kentucky that we went to visit. And what we would set up would be different colleges within that school. We can call them colleges, academies, whatever we would like to do. But some of the examples we were talking about were engineering, aviation, biotechnology, computer science, business and entrepreneurship, design, and teacher education. Moving in this direction, we would provide the solutions for the students that are needed for their career-based outlook in the future. I wanted to show this to you. This is the opportunities. Currently, we have the population that you see on the left-hand side in each one of our schools. Now, I have to explain, CMS has 300 students that are not Career Center students. They are just CMS students. The Career Center students are 400. So Sean has 200 of them each semester added to the 300. So there's 500 students. And I rounded, by the way, except for CVA, because CVA's actually was 246. So if we were to implement the 9th grade academy and keep all the 9th graders at Cassius, Cassius would have 1,900, CMS would have 500, and the Career Center would still have 400, unless we got them to provide some additional programs. I will tell you, if there's one program that's opened at the Career Center, our district would get 16 spots for 8 for each semester. So as you can see, one program is going to take quite a while for many programs to give us 100 seats, so to speak. So any kind of extra that we get is beneficial to us. And then if we implemented a CMS 2.0 or Ignite, then Cassius could be at 1850, CMS at 750, CMS 2.0 at 750, but the Career Center then at 400, you could have them go back to Cassius and have 2050 there each time with 200 split. You could divide that up a little bit with, and I know some people want CVA as well, but truly, I truly believe this, and sorry Heidi Minnie, our director for CVA, I truly believe if we would implement these things that we're looking at doing into 2030, our CVA numbers would go down because the students are actually getting an option that they want. So these are something that we just wanted to give you as far as numbers to allow you to see what be coming up in the future. And we want to open up for questions.
I have a question. On the recovery, we started that, what, about 2-3 years ago?
Credit recovery?
Credit recovery, was that something?
Credit recovery's been in existence for quite a while, but COVID put a stop to it. So we revived it then, and then we got some grant money. That grant money was able to be used for a lot of credit recovery. Because of being online, many students did not do what they were needed to do for graduation. So that's really when we had hundreds of kids in it.
Will we be able to get some numbers on that?
To assist you, I think, with what your question, where you're going.
Student is in 9th grade and they take a whole year 9th grade English course and they fail it. They have to come back as a 10th grader, but then they also have to take their 9th grade course, and we don't always have the seats available because you have 9th graders coming in who fill those seats first.
Right.
So in a situation like Block, student who's in ninth grade doesn't do well first semester in ELA, which is English, they could take it again in second semester, and it would still be somewhat fresh in their mind. They just need to fix some of the things that they didn't do well the first semester. That would be the difference.
Right, okay.
Is that what you were looking towards?
Yeah. And then that's where the graduation rates you said has helped with the
Absolutely.
graduation. Okay.
And again, like we said before too, you're looking at 8 classes pretty much in a block setting, 4 per. Right now we're running 7 a year. So if you do 4 years times 8, do 7 times, it's a big difference. They can be graduating early.
Right.
Or doing credit recovery and still graduating on time.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So since COVID, then we those numbers should be, the graduation numbers would be looking better because of those. Or do we have numbers on that? Just curious. Who, the students that were in there that ended up graduating, that we know that was.
We would have to get you numbers on.
Oh, no, yeah. Not right now, but I mean, that was, yeah.
I heard everything and I thought, wow, this sounds like a really good idea. And I've heard all the benefits and the challenges seem to be manageable. My question is, why haven't we done this a long time ago?
I think, and I'm going to be pretty blunt about this, Mr. Raber said it before, we've always done it this way. That's really the reason why. I mean,
Okay.
no one's really taken it and moved on with it. You know, this is just something that we can see that we need to align the schedules in order to provide more opportunities for students. Sure.
I'm especially excited about the ninth grade academy. Having all the ninth graders together in ninth grade, I think is very important. I just hope it happens soon,
Yes.
like next year.
Yeah.
All ninth, I see ninth grade academy occurring at Caches for sure, but I don't see all ninth graders at Caches next year. That'd be a little bit too quick.
There's a lot of planning for that, for sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Long, Brad, Sean, thank you. Okay, moving into the consent agenda items. 5.02 and 5.03, Mrs. Stauffer covered those earlier in her detailed presentation. Anyway, any of the other items, 5.01 through 5.13, Chris or any of your team members, you want to elaborate on any of those? You get to go first. And we'll come to the board members. Board members have any questions on comments, discussions, more information on anything with a 5 in front of it?
Yes, I have item 5.04. I have a question. So I'd like to pull that one.
This is just discussion, so yep, this one's very easy tonight.
Okay.
No vote. We're just discussing them tonight, and then we'll see whether they all go forward to a vote at our next meeting.
So 504 talks about food service consulting agreement, and I'm in favor of that. But looking at the agreement, it looks like the minimum cost per year would be $14,000. The maximum wouldn't exceed $28,000 per year. There is a proposed start date, which is passed, so I imagine it would start December, January. And there's no termination date to the end of the contract. I'm always a little wary about any contract that doesn't specify deliverables other than a vague Pennsylvania Association of School Board Officers Food Service Improvement Plan. That's the what. There's no timeline as to when, and it doesn't articulate any expectations or outcomes. And I'm on the Wellness Committee, so I'm aware of the need to improve food service, but I'm not sure how we know when we are there. Will the ultimate clients of this effort, the students, be surveyed to ask them, hey, do you like the food better here? So how will we know if this contract effort is successful if we have no means to evaluate contract performance?
One minute, okay. Thank you, Mr. Haydock. Good questions. So this really came out of the PASBO study that we conducted last year. There were certain areas of efficiencies that need to be gained. So we would be looking at this group to help our food service management implement those recommendations. One of the things that we've done, we've had issues in the past with retaining staff. We've had issues where our openings were about 25% of the number of employees that we need to employ. So we've set some very specific goals with the food service manager to try to say, these are the things, these are the bars that you need to try to hit. This consulting agreement will help focus on those areas. So one of the ways that we will measure that is through employee surveys. We've done the first one, which was just basically around the culture, do they feel valued, those types of things. This isn't really going to look so much at the quality of the food that we're serving. It will look at efficiencies that need to be done over at the high school. Some of the issues that we've seen at the high school is around the schedule that we have, and I can't think of what it's called. The waves, thank you, where it's a very short period of time. So it'll be helping us implement some changes in those areas.
Tammy, if you could, in the weekly report, provide the PASBO study that outlined all of the goals that were part of that study.
I
And
can
this
do
is
that.
support to directly reach those goals.
Yep,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
This Friday.
Mhm.
And that'll be this Friday?
This Friday, yep.
Other questions, comments?
I have one. Since we just got that presentation about the block scheduling, how will that affect the study, or are they taking that into consideration whenever you guys, because you just said about the high school and the efficiencies. So if you do switch, are you taking that into consideration as far as how that would go, or would that affect that at all?
I've not had a conversation with Brad. I know that you've spoken with Jared about what yeah.
Yeah, so with the block, lunches will now have 4 waves rather than 3. So that'll reduce the amount of students per wave. And also, in talking to Jared, he believes that this will provide his staff more time to actually restock areas to prepare for the next wave.
So
to come
just
down.
another way that block scheduling would be beneficial,
For sure.
essentially.
Yes.
Can you clarify what's the earliest that students would head to lunch and what's the latest that they would leave lunch in a block scenario? That might be, I'm putting you on the spot there.
He's been studying this. I think he's got it.
Okay. Sorry. Even if you have a ballpark idea, just
10, 20.
Yep.
It's in the tens, isn't it? 10, 20 to 10.
I'm going to provide you the exact time. It'll be 11:08 would be the first lunch, and the last lunch would be 12:38. And the reason behind that is because we're running 90-minute blocks, you have to provide 120 minutes during that block 3. It gives you 90 minutes of a class and 30 minutes for a lunch. So it gives us 4 waves, 4 30-minute waves.
Okay, good question. Other questions on any other items?
I wanted 7 when you get there. No, when you get to 7, when you move on.
I have a question about 505. I'm just curious to know event staff stipends shifting to a per event stipend. Doesn't this disincentivize people from covering the longer events?
It would be based on an hour, like we've looked at the events, so it varies by event depending on the number of hours. Basically, we've had some issues with our support staff, people who are hourly employees working events, and then we get into an overtime rate, and it should be blended. It just becomes very messy. So we looked at what could be done so that our employees could continue to partake in this. So if you work a football game and it's 3 hours, the stipend's going to be based on the $15.
Gotcha. So it's a higher.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more
Yeah.
sense.
Yes.
Other questions? Okay.
I'm curious to know about 503, the approval of the proposed preliminary budget. At what point do we start getting locked in? Because I remember in the process, you end up, well, you can't go up, you can only go down.
Right.
Is this, will next week's vote be
Yeah.
part of that?
Yes, this vote, when you vote for the opt-out resolution, you are locking the board into going to the max would be the adjusted index, which is 5.3%. You can, from there, you can go anywhere.
Okay, so you're talking about 502
Well, yes,
is where
but
we
it's
land on that.
basically,
I'm more curious about 503.
they're basically the same, though. 502 is just the resolution, 503 is going to be the preliminary budget that I just presented, which is at
Okay.
2%. You can go up to the 5.3, but you can't go
Okay.
above 5.3.
The final
makes sense.
vote will be the June
Meeting,
right?
correct,
Yeah.
right, when we set the tax rate.
Okay,
And it can adjust any time in between there, going up or down, but you can't go above the 5.3.
that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Good questions. Any others? Okay, all those items will go forward at our next meeting at the 10th to vote on in the consent section. Item 7.01, facility feasibility study recommendation. Mr. Bigger.
Yeah, just want to highlight, we're coming to the conclusion of our study, and a recommendation from myself and the administration and our architects will be to recommend the K-3, 4-6, 7-8, and 9-12 scenario. 4B, whatever presentation you've been to, is the preferred scenario. We will have a full document from the architects for the next board meeting, which is basically aggregate of all the presentations, everything they put together from the architectural view as the meat behind the recommendation for moving to that grade configuration. So the only other items you will have will be a forum on Thursday to Q&A at the Rec Center, December 9th, and then any results from our survey we're going to push out tomorrow would be your last components of information before making a decision. This does not mean you're locked into everything in your head. We have to then work with an architect, design, come to you for costs. I mean, there's a lot of other steps, many steps, that'll come before you over the next year that you have decisions over on the size of the building, the design of the building, the scopes of the buildings. So this isn't the end of your voting, but this is the beginning of going down the grade configuration approach.
To that point, Chris, will they have somewhat of a timeline cheat sheet? You know,
We won't get to that point until, so once we approve the feasibility study, the recommendation, then we will start on negotiations with the architects on fees and structure. We get them on board with board approval of architects. After that, then we will begin the phasing timeline and implementation.
Okay.
Then we'll start bringing that to you on what the likely scenarios are, whether the 7-8 building is renovated first versus the new buildings first, and what works best architecturally for students and for also funding and bond borrowing. We have a lot of work to do to figure out what's first, who's first on, and who's on second.
okay. I guess I was thinking more from the owner's perspective, i.e. Chanceburg School District. We would have a request or an ask, hey, we're looking to have building 1 done by this time frame and building 2 by that time frame. And then in the process of selecting architect, you see who can maybe deliver
Yeah.
what you want, when you want it best. That's
We
sort of my
outlined,
thinking.
the preliminary outline in the forums I've indicated is fall of 27, spring of 28 would be the earliest any new or renovated facility would be available to us. So that's the end game. I think the challenge for us will be how long does it take to do land development on a new facility versus a renovation at Cam's North or South. which is much easier to ramp up. So I think, yeah, those are some challenges we can bring before you. If you have goals or the board has aspirational goals of timeframes, please start sharing them with me of when you'd like to see some of this done.
Well, I know my question isn't so much the time frame for myself. It's the least important, and not so much for the board as it is for the public. Right. Again, it's a $170 million investment. Let's put a timeline out there and let's benchmark it and let the public, the taxpayers who are funding this, see where we are in that.
I think if you give us until about January, February, we'll be able to come back with some examples of what we're looking at.
Okay. And then the other thing, I love the name, Schools of Distinction by 2030 project. As I mentioned last meeting, I'm gonna take a page out of the corporate world here. You have to brand it. Means we need an emblem, a logo, a slogan,
all kinds of stuff,
and lots of banners.
All right. We're on it.
All right.
We're on it. Love it. We need to get approved next Tuesday first.
Okay. By Wednesday?
Sure, sure. You guys want things fast. I see it.
I don't know, it might be a great competition for some art students or something. There you go. Make it fun, but. Okay, any questions for Mr. Bigger on 7.01? Okay. Item 10.01. Okay. That's okay, don't worry about it, Tammy. We'll grab the sheet later, but maybe Mr. Ocker or someone can bring it up for us. Thank you. Any members of the audience? The lady in the back raised her hand first. Yes, ma'am. That's it, Brad. I think that's it. Thank you, Brad. And just until I get my cheat sheet, just let us know what item.
It's a non-agenda item.
Okay, very well.
Yep.
Thank you.
Jillian Culler, 423 Stauffer Avenue. Good evening. When I told my son last year as a kindergartner that I was attending Mr. Bigger's public forums in the springtime, I asked my son if there was anything he wanted the new leader of our school district to know. He said he wanted me to ask for 3 recesses instead of 2. Typical kid. I recently learned that a professional scheduler was hired this past summer to find additional time as learning time and efficiency. And I understand this has led to a district-wide change for elementary schools to have 2 15-minute recesses a day, changed from 2 20-minute recesses a day. 2 15-minute recesses a day is bleak. 2 20-minute recesses a day is bleak. I am asking the school board to reconsider these changes to increase the amount of play and movement in our school days. Elementary kids sit in seats and follow instruction from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. with an hour total for recess and lunch combined. I am requesting for the 20-minute recesses to return at a minimum. I would love to see, I am a parent and asking for this. I understand there are learning standards for each grade, and our teachers work hard to cover subject material. However, if we can count computer games as fitting into our learning standards, I would argue that playing on the playground offers infinitely more opportunity for learning. Play is not time off from learning. It is intense learning. Beyond just health and phys ed, it offers ample opportunity for the soft skills that are needed in successful adults, like creative problem solving, thinking outside the box, resolving conflict, communication, empathy, and teamwork. It also improves focus for when it is time to sit down in the classroom. Data tells us that kids' learning goes up and behaviors go down when kids are given ample opportunity to move and play. One of my best friends is a kindergarten teacher at a neighboring district, and when talking to my son last year when he was in kindergarten, she asked if he got to play at school. I thought this was a phenomenal question. What would each elementary student in CASD say if we asked them? This shouldn't be up to each individual teacher if they incorporate play in their day. This ought to be a culture shift in our schools, one of allowing kids to learn through play. After I told my son that I was attending the public forum in the springtime with Mr. Bigger, the next morning my son woke up and asked me, "Did you ask the new leader if we will get 3 recesses?" And I told him no, there were other more important things we were discussing. And I regret that I said that to him. So here I am asking on behalf of my son and all the kids over CASD for more playtime, because play is learning. Thank you.
Mrs. Jordan?
This is a agenda item. Your projected 2025-2026 school budget. Concerning your projected 2025-2026 school budget of $201.6 million, I see a 2% increase in salaries to our contracted employees at $4.1 million when the budget is finally passed on June 3rd, 2025. A 2% increase to these contracted employees and a pandemic should ratify the teacher's contract. If I take into consideration my current school tax bill of $4,000, that means $81.36 of my school tax bill fund teachers' salaries. That $81.36 equals about 2 dinners out for my husband and me. By the way, those teachers living in our school district pay the same taxes we all do in this room. The assessment growth rate at 1% in our school district still appears to be good. Currently, this is good news, up the street from me, there are 8 new homes being built, which guarantees no children will be coming into our school district either, because it's Penn National. That's pure revenue flowing into the 2025. The collection rate at 98% is great. Increased income at $500,000 is still a good amount of money to consider here. With other sources of income of $80,000, I'll take that money too. $580,000 out of a $201.6 million budget gives the taxpayers 0.29% in revenues for next year. It was mentioned some weeks ago by Board President Ed Norcross that he likes to see monies coming from outside our school district. It appears that our next year's school budget will be funded by the state at 34%. That's a large amount of money. That's certainly a large amount of money, a large amount of dollars to consider here too. Our school district also receives generous donations from outside entities all the time. Also, I'd like to point out that if our school district is offered a grant at say 50-50 match, which there are grants like that, it is still money that Mr. Ed Norcross and Mrs. Valerie Jordan don't have to totally lay out here either. A 50% match is better than no match at all. I also bought my tape measure tonight, because this was said to me over something went up on social media. Brought my tape measure along as a visual for the room to see. If you read my email concerning teachers forced to use a tape measure to teach fractions, none of us learn fractions by a tape measure. Not now, not ever, even in Catholic school. My nuns and my lay teachers never taught me fractions by a tape measure.
Thank you, Mrs. Jordan. Thank you. Any other members of the audience? Any public comment or items? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Steve Gogler, 457 Paul Avenue, taxpayer parent. Just want to commend you on bringing on, or considering bringing on, the consultant, having personally experienced her trainings by my employer. They are excellent. She's a highly, they are a highly reputable company. I've actually been trained multiple times by Carol Gilbert herself. So they are a highly reputable company. So I just personally want to encourage you to not hide the dirty laundry in the closet, because the only way the stains come out is if the consultant can help you learn how to clean them up. Then lastly, I just want to encourage you to highly consider what this woman said, because it's something I've been preaching to my mother for many years.
Thank you. Any other members of the audience wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items? Okay, and for information, minutes from the Franklin Learning Center September meeting. And with that, we will be adjourned, and we'll be back here next week. Thank you.